Hey guys, Victor here, and today we're going to be having a discussion video, which is pretty rare for this channel if I'm being honest. But this video has been a long time coming, and it's going to be about why I feel you should be playing Tengu plant format as like your go-to time wizard format, since it is a format that is like, very near and dear to my heart. So hopefully by the end of this video, I'll be able to convert some of you guys over and you can, join in on the fun that is Tengu plant format. So with that, I'll catch you guys in a bit. So the first topic that I want to touch upon is the diversity of the format, because for some reason, countless people tend to think that there's only 4 viable decks in this format, which honestly couldn't be any farther from the truth, but those 4 decks just happen to be Agents, TGs, Tengu Plant, and Hero Beat. But yeah, that's pretty much just like from an outsider's perspective. If you've actually played the format, you know that's just not the case. So first, let's compare this format to Edison format, right? Everyone that plays Edison format is always raving about how it's so diverse and there's so many different decks that you can play. But newsflash, every single deck in Edison, or at least almost every single deck, is playable in Tengu Plant format. And not only are they playable, but they've actually been enhanced by a lot of the cards released. Let's take Chaos decks, for example. Chaos is a very popular deck in Edison. Thanks to Tengu Plant format, they've gotten Tour Guide from the Underworld, Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, Leviator the Sea Dragon to get back banished monsters, and so many other cards. You have Diva variants as well, which, have gotten a brand new toy in the extra deck that they can use in the form of Gachi Gachi Kentetsu, which I don't know if you guys know, but Gachi Gachi is very irritating to get rid of in this format, and it adds like another defensive layer that the deck previously lacked, as it was pretty much like an all or nothing deck. Lightsworn, if you want to like luck sack your opponent, just recently got a 3rd Judgment Dragon as well as the BLS to help enhance their plays. X Sabers, the Shining Darkness is legal in this format, so that means you have access to XX Saber Dark Soul or Bogart Knight. There's just so many decks in Edison format that have been enhanced, and it's not just those decks too. Upon further revisiting of the format, we've recently discovered that there are still other viable decks too, such as Scraps, Gravekeepers, Drax, all these decks that we previously considered to be trash, right? No, they're actually very viable and can straight up just, win tournaments on their own. If you need proof, feel free to check out TCG Rewind. He's great at, like providing a historical or just archiving every single modern Tengu Plant format so you can see the proof, in actual like physical evidence. Or if you just want deck profiles, I have a ton of those on my channel. I think we're currently up to around 40 as of the time of this video, and I've barely scratched the surface. And not to mention, every single one of those decks is, viable and can win a tournament on their own, but they're just templates, so you should be able to, add your own flair to them you should be able to add your own flair to them to fit your own playstyle, because playstyles are very much a real thing in this format, contrary to popular belief. Now, you may be wondering, if a format is so diverse, how do I go about preparing for it? Like, how do I side? Well, the fact of the matter is, a lot of these decks, even though there's so many of them, share similar weaknesses. Take Gravekeepers, Hero Beat, and TGs, for example, right? They're very back row heavy decks. So, in preparation for that, you can play cards like Royal Decree, Trap Stun, your 3 Mystical Space Typhoons that you're able to use, Heavy Storm, things of that nature. Or if you're playing against a more graveyard-based deck, DD Crow, Soul Release, so many cards. There's so many cards that work against multiple matchups that siding is actually pretty easy in a format like this. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the diversity standpoint, and now we can move on to the next topic. All right, so the next topic I want to cover is the price of the format, because compared to back in the day, the format is super cheap to get into, because let's face it, like cards like Tour Guide only came in secret, Maxi only came in secret, Hyper Librarian was a jump promo, BLS was recently reprinted in Gold Series 4, but it still ran you like around 30 bucks, I think, from what I remember. So it wasn't cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And you have countless examples of cards that used to be worth money that are just not worth anything anymore, like Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, Solemn Warning, Pot of Duality. I can just go on and on and on. And the value of these cards is so low because there are so many available reprints. So if you want to get into the format but are like holding out because of price, let me just tell you, it's very easy and very cheap. You could easily get into this format for maybe like 50 bucks or so, which, compared to like modern Yu-Gi-Oh or even retro Yu-Gi-Oh is really, really accessible, because let's face it, not everyone has the money to spend on these types of decks. However, if you do have money, let me tell you about max rarity, because these decks do not come cheap. Tour Guide, for example, has an ultimate printing. Maxi also has an ultimate printing that each run you for a couple $100 minimum. TG Hyper Librarian comes in prize card format, so if you want to shell out a couple grand, you know, go for it, man. All in all, though, like I said, if you want to get into this format for cheap, you totally can. It's honestly up to you what you want to spend and how nice you want to make your deck. And with that, that's the price section, and now we can move on to the next portion of the video. So the next topic I want to talk about is like how skillful this format is, which depending on like your point of view of Yu-Gi-Oh is either a really good thing or a really bad thing, because compared to modern Yu-Gi-Oh where you're basically just trying to floodgate your opponent out or just build up an unstoppable field that your opponent has trouble breaking through, modern or retro Yu-Gi-Oh such as Tengu Plant format could not be any farther from that, because it's a very resource heavy game. You're not trying to invest everything. You want to hold on to your resources for as long as possible until like you can't no longer do that, right? Take Dark Hole and Heavy Storm for example. These cards are fantastic power spells in addition to cards like Monster Reborn that can 100% just win the game outright if used properly. However, there are also times where you just use them early on, right? So you just Dark Hole, a random one card that's set on like your opponent's field and it's like a sand gamble. Congrats, you wasted your Dark Hole and your opponent floated into something better. Or if you have a Heavy Storm, right, you set a Heavy Storm or you activate Heavy Storm into one set back row, and then your opponent's like, sick, they don't have Heavy Storm anymore, so they proceed to set their entire hand. Like those things can just backfire immediately, so you have to know when to use your cards properly. And that's just like a couple situations, right? Say for example you want to go for game. Can you fight through Effect Veiler or Maxi? Yes. Well, if you can fight through those, can you then proceed to fight through Gore's Emissary Darkness or Trigodia? Because those cards are very much a real threat in this format. Or even Pot of Avarice, right? You may not think it's all that skillful because it's just a shuffle 5 draw 2, and that's, you know, it's really deceptive in that way, because the fact of the matter is, like, should you use it right away the moment your graveyard hits 5, or do you want to get a couple more resources into the graveyard that are more valuable in your deck? Like, you know, there's just so many things you have to consider that I can understand that at times it does feel a bit overwhelming, but, you know, that's just how Yu-Gi-Oh is. However, if you don't agree with this format being skillful, there's a certain feature match written on Konami's blog about YCS Columbus 2011, where in the finals of Game 3, a certain Yu-Gi-Oh player known as Billy Brake somehow managed to open up or draw into all 3 of his Reborn Tengus by turn 2, and he still ended up winning the championship. So, you know, skill definitely does matter, and I can't think of like a better example than that feature match itself. So with that, that's the skill-based portion, and now I want to talk about, you know, the problems with this format. So for the final topic, I wanted to talk about the problems with the card pool and Tengu Plant format specifically, just because much like every format, nothing is perfect, and you're always going to have some kind of nonsense around that's going to ruin the experience for players. And in my opinion, these are probably like the 4 biggest issues that the format has. So we have Trap Death Shoot being, I can't even put into words how degenerate this card is, because if you go first and you open the Death Shoot, a lot of the times, let's face it, you get full knowledge of your opponent's hand, you spend back their best monster, and just that knowledge alone can straight up win you the game. BLS, you know, top deck BLS, or even just holding it until like the very end when your opponent's resources are down. If BLS comes down, chances are you're losing that game, because your opponent is not going to be wasting their BLS early unless they really have to, or they for sure know that they can win the game. You have Hyper Librarian, who whenever he comes down, you already know something degenerate's about to happen, whether it's your opponent drawing a million resources or just being able to use Hyper Librarian defensively, right? Because every time a monster is synchro summoned, Hyper Librarian draws a card. So that means you or your opponent performing it. So shutting off like a mechanic such as synchro monsters can go a long way and just like helping you in the game. And then you have Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, who, much like Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning, the moment it comes down, yeah, you better have a Veiler or you're not winning that game, because it's hitting a precious resource out of your graveyard, from your field and your hand, leaving you on very low resources, and it's almost like not impossible, but it's very difficult to actually come back from that. So yeah, now you may be wondering, hey Victor, aren't you missing a card? And it would be the perfect card to make this a top 5 degenerate cards, wouldn't it? Well, if it's the card that I'm thinking of, the answer is no, honestly. So let's talk about it. So the 5th and final card, even though I don't think it's that degenerate, is Maxi. So why don't I think Maxi fits into this card pool? Well, compared to modern Yu-Gi-Oh, where Maxi literally can win or lose a game instantly, that's just not the case for Tengu Plant format. It's only really good against like the super combo heavy decks, as is tradition. So you have your Diva variants or your Tengu Plant variants. But even then, those decks don't really care all that much about Max C, because let's take Diva for example. If you get Max C'd by Diva, you just go straight into Gachi Gachi Gentetsu, which is going to take multiple resources for your opponent to even out anyways, and all the while they only went +1 because of it. So yeah, that deck doesn't really care. If you talk about Tengu Plant, they're more than capable of just passing a turn, setting, like, not overextending if they don't have to, and then just trying to beat you on the next one, because that's just how this format is. Like, you're not going to be able to reverse OTK your opponent just because you activated Max C. This isn't modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So you got to get that mentality out of your head. And then against the vast majority of the decks, this card is just terrible. So there's so many trap heavy decks, whether it's like TG Stun, Hero Beat, Gravekeepers, where this card just does absolutely nothing, right? You're playing as a TG Stun player or a Hero Beat player, congrats, you're going 1-for-1 at most. Thanks to Maxi. At that point, you might as well just be playing Upstart Goblin instead, just because it's actually at least guaranteed to draw you a card. But it's honestly gotten to the point where most people are actually just citing Maxi because of how ineffective it is against the majority of the meta game. Like, it's only really good against those special summon heavy decks, and even then, like, they can still play through it very easily. So, I mean, if you don't believe me, like I said, once again, check out TCG Rewind. He has all the proof you need about this type of topic. So, with that, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully some of you guys, you know, are convinced, hopefully, to join the Tengu Plant community and, you know, play games, enjoy the format like the rest of us. And if you did or did not, let me know down below in the comments section. Well, other than that, if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.